Dear students, today we have Dr. J.S. Yadav with us. Dr. Yadav is Director of International Media Institute. Dr. Yadav is a known communication expert in our country. He has been Director of IMC for a long time. He has made tremendous contribution in the field of media and communication. Today we will discuss communication process with Dr. Yadav. Dr. Yadav, welcome to this program.
Thank you.
Just throw some brief light on the communication process.
Well, let's first have a very simple, clear understanding about communication as a process. I would say communication process is a process of interaction between two or more people to exchange information, ideas and values through shared sign and symbols. It's a very simple definition. Essentially, it's an interaction, and the three things happen in that interaction. Either you exchange information, ideas or values. As a matter of fact, all three, information, ideas and values, go together. Sometimes emphasis on information, sometimes on the values, sometimes on the ideas. But it's a process of exchange, interaction.
Exchanging information, ideas
and values.
And values.
Manyata, yeah.
How values are influenced in this process?
Well, very difficult to influence the values. Exchange of information, idea is simple, easy and takes place most of the times. Exchange of ideas is still more deeper, difficult. But exchange of values is far more difficult. People don't change that easily. What you believe is a belief system which you imbibe from birth onward. So, but still in anything we do, there is some hidden or not so hidden values. Even simple things like don't smoke is an information, but behind that is an idea, and behind that there is a value also.
So in this context, what are the major functions of communication?
Essentially, I would say communication performs 5 functions. Normally people say 3, that is to inform, educate and entertain. These are kind of catchwords which everybody use. I normally add 2 more, that is to relate. Through information, people relate with one another, and that's how society, groups, nations are formed, and give the identity to each one of us. And 5th function, which I say, which is also very important, an ultimate end of all exchange, that is to influence. Whenever we have a communication or interaction or exchange of information, ideas and values, the basic purpose is to influence the other party, to make them to do things as we wish them to do things, or think them in a way we think, have an attitude which we have. So influence in broad sense is the crucial role of communication.
The term that is used, agenda setting, also is part of influencing?
It's a part of that. Agenda setting is a very specialized kind of things around which this is used in the context of mass media. That mass media normally sets the agenda around which the discussions will take place, information will be exchanged, ideas will be exchanged. We often even call mass media as a platform which set the agenda. It means throw up ideas, throw up issues around which discussions take place. In that sense, it's used as agenda setting.
Conventionally, as you mentioned, that major functions are information, education, entertainment, and how these different streams they work in the means of mass communication.
Well, primary function of mass media, particularly the news media, is to exchange information. With societies have become mass societies. Earlier, people used to live in a smaller community and they knew each other face to face. What happens? Everybody knew it and exchanged through interpersonal communication. But now we are becoming more organized, more differentiated, what we call mass society. In mass society, people get information indirectly. What we call, we don't get information directly, but mediated information. What happens, common man doesn't have an access to that information personally and directly. He has to use other sources like newspaper. If an earthquake takes place, when she comes to know through radio, television, that's the information part of it. Education is a step further, means when you say education, you not only have information, but you also place that information in a particular broader context. Means one is earthquake has taken place, education would be if you could gather more information about earthquake, how it takes place, what are its implications. That becomes a part of education. Means information placed into a broader context becomes an education in general terms. And third means you cannot have information or entertainment, education if you put it very dull way, if you don't enjoy. Here entertainment means in a very broad sense again what you call you enjoy that process. Normally people associate entertainment with songs, dance, drama, films, but entertainment, when I use it and it's used in communication sense, you must enjoy the process. Now if students are enjoying what we are talking now, or I'm enjoying what I'm saying, we together, then it's entertainment. But if you are not enjoying yourself, mentally you will switch off and communication will break.
How do we evaluate that in these different channels of communication? How do we evaluate them in terms of information, education, entertainment, or whether it's a total package that every bit of information is containing all three elements in it?
Everything has all the three. Its emphasis might be changed. Newspaper emphasis is on giving information, what has happened around in the last 24 hours. And an hourly bulletin is give information about what has happened in the last 1 hour, the latest, that kind of thing. But there is an element of education in all information, and in both information and education there is an element of entertainment. Though in let's take films and television and songs,
the difference of degree that we can say.
It's a tremendous difference in degree, and the emphasis totally shift when you take a movie. You look it for more for enjoyment, more for entertainment. There you don't look for information or education, but that doesn't mean information is you don't get it. That doesn't mean you are not educated. You are primarily entertained, but you get a lot of new information. You also get educated about how society functions.
Briefly, we can say that news media is dominantly informational and feature films are dominantly entertaining.
Yes, I think that's very true. The predominant function of a newspaper or news media is to inform and to some extent educate, while that of television entertainment programs and films is primarily to entertain. But that doesn't mean pure entertainment. You also get a lot of information and education through entertainment media.
So where we can place education between them?
Today the concept is infotainment, means you also inform, you also entertain, and that's how it works. Because if you put something in a very dull, drab way, people go away, people don't listen, people don't watch you, and the purpose is not served. So how to put your point of view, or even the information, that's why news writing is always said, you make it more readable. Why make it more readable? It's easy to comprehend. And a person who starts reading, keep on reading. That's the whole idea. So otherwise you would have given 24 killed, and that's all.
It is also argued that infotainment is eroding the educational function of media as a whole, the kind of trends that are emerging today.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people are realizing you cannot push down the throats of people if they don't like it. So tell them or communicate with them in such a way that they enjoy the process of being informed, of being educated. And if they don't enjoy the process, they will not get full benefit of even education or information.
Now, you have very rich experience and vast experience in communication research though. So how what people like is being evaluated in present context?
No, evaluation, effect, reach is a vast area, and I think cannot be discussed in detail here, but broadly I would say effect or impact or evaluation is a simple process in one way, because every communication has certain function, and I just said it in the beginning, there are 5 functions of communication, that is inform, educate, entertainment, relate and influence. If you take these 5 points and see how a particular communication has been effective, how far it has been effective in informing the people, if informing is the objective of communication. If its a main function is entertainment, how far that particular communication or package of communication has been able to entertain people or educate people or relate people. So efficacy of communication material or evaluation of a communication material or communication campaign or communication process is, I would say, in relation to these 5 basic functions. They are together, but where is you first state what your objectives were and then evaluate the communication package.
No, first my point was that the infotainment that has become very dominant today. First is, it is argued that people want this, people want that, and that's why we are providing them this kind of infotainment. That's one argument. And second argument is whether this process of infotainment is creating a certain amount of confusion that what really are the functions of media, because you said that news media primarily is to inform people. Whether that function is getting diluted in the process.
Well, Professor Dhulia, you're raising a very valid questions because too much emphasis on infotainment is also pointing the direction towards commercialization. In the name of infotainment, commercialization has taken place. Commercialization to some extent is a necessity, but beyond a point it becomes a liability, and if you deviate from your original function of informing people or educating people or entertaining people, then you are going away. But let's take simple example. Any communication, if it doesn't draw attention and doesn't sustain attention, is likely to be not that effective. People might ignore if something has happened and it has not drawn the attention. That's why infotainment becomes necessary, that people, students, suppose, let's talk in terms of students. Suppose you give a material to students to read. If it's not put in an interesting way, they might not be able to sustain the interest. First, it may not draw an attention. Having drawn attention, they may not sustain the interest. Even if they sustain the interest, if it's not properly put, they may not continue with that. So the purpose of your objective of informing, educating, this communication purpose is also lost. So people are talking of a reasonable balance between information and entertainment. If you have a reasonable, good balance, and that's where the creativity is most required. How creatively you put your point of view, how creatively you communicate with the intended audience. Now that point also need to be emphasized, that something which is entertaining to you may not be entertaining to others. Something which is good for you may not be. So in communication, most important thing is the audience, the target audience. In that context, means we say consumer is the king, I would say audience is the king. They decide you, however good communicator you are, if you are not come to their level, if you not put your point of view, put your communication at that level, you are not likely to be that successful.
So that's true, because every media will try to capture the audience and to draw their attention. But somewhere it is being felt that one thing is that you mentioned that every package ought to be very, very interesting, only then it can draw attention. But somewhere, can we differentiate that what really is interesting and what is dramatization and what is sensationalism? Somewhere I think in the process of making some media product interesting, these limits are getting crossed. That means that something is getting overlapped. That means dramatization and sensationalization and
I 100% agree with you. We are at times crossing the limits and in the name of commercial interest or in the name of infotainment. Basically these concepts are the Western concept. And when there are too many channels, too many sources are there, then competition becomes more. And because there is a competition, the idea of drawing an attention and retaining the interest becomes a considerations. If there are not many channels, if there are not many sources, then this question would not have arisen. In plurality there is some advantage, multiple sources, you have an advantage. And when you have multiple sources of many newspapers, many news channels, so how to ensure that your channel is watched? Suppose your channel is not watched, you are putting things across in a drab way. People will not hear, your good intentions will be lost sight of. But ensuring that in the age of competition, in the age of multi-sourcing, perhaps the combination of this good blend of information and entertainment becomes a necessity. But certainly the decision has to be on the creative persons, how much of what. and ultimate purpose of education and information should not be lost in the entertainment. Just to justify we are doing infotainment and you are going overboard for entertainment. And that's why there is a lot of criticism of modern mass media also, both in terms of over-emphasis on entertainment, over-emphasis on commercial angle. Many people even say selling a newspaper or is just like selling a soap. Perhaps, at least I don't agree with that kind of thought. But people are saying openly selling a newspaper or running a channel is like another product and you have to sell in market. That's not true, and that should not be, because a product you can easily change, means a soap or a toothpaste or a toothbrush. But media informs, educates, entertain your mind. It affects your mind, which is very vital, particularly in growing age. This would be concern. Later on, things might take its own. They might be more discreet, but in growing age, certain restraints.
Yes, you mentioned infotainment and commercialization, and taking into consideration these trends of infotainment and commercialization. Where do you place media today? That means what kind of role media is actually playing in terms of information, education, entertainment, or whether entertainment is becoming very, very dominant in every sector. That means somewhere real information is a casualty, somewhere the educational function is a casualty. How do you evaluate? Where do you place our media in totality in terms of discharging these functions?
Of late, there are trends, too much of sensationalizations, too much of commercial interest, and too much of emphasis on entertainment. But I would say people are very discreet also. If they go overboard, at least I have, as a communication scholar, faith in the audience, the Indian audience. People do reject when you go overboard, whether it's a newspaper or it's a channel. People do see through it. You are going more entertainment and not giving the facts, provided there are alternate channels available. Suppose everybody goes that, then information might be a casualty. But in the hope, in multiplicity of channels and sources, someone will give the correct picture. And if someone gives the correct picture and people know about it, they reject those who go overboard, or at least their readership or viewership comes down. And it has been seen many a times. Any channel who takes a side of one particular political party, particularly in politics, people shift to other channels.
There are a large number of channels and newspapers and magazines, and definitely there are multiple sources, but a kind of a trend is emerging that when there are multiple channels and multiple sources, but the variety and diversity somewhere is shrinking also as well.
Yeah, that's one observation, that despite a large number of sources, they are giving more or less the same. That's the
coverage, the area coverage area getting eroded down. That means
and the real news or real issues are not getting covered. Well, that's a concern for all media persons and media scholars, and I would say a debate and discussion need to take place. What's the nature of coverage? Are we really covering the real issues which affect the masses? If you examine any day's newspapers, real issues from the larger point of view, which Gandhi used to say, the last man in the row or last man in the crowd, his tears should be washed. If you apply that kind of thing, what are the issues? Means even at national level, more and more things you will find like Shilpa Shetty and occupying the entire news channel space on particular days, while real issues get lost. I would say that's a wrong kind of trend, but somehow I have faith people and media men themselves or professionals will strike a balance. These kind of situations do arise at this stage. Yeah, sorry.
What are major factors that are responsible for this kind of a situation?
Commercial interest is one, but I would say another is a non-professionalism, shortcuts. People don't take the trouble, means most media people don't go out of their premises and kind of manufacture, quote unquote, the news and programs right there, because real coverage requires much hard work, and that's why I often say those who join journalism mass communication course, they're attracted more by glamour, more by money, more by the power they enjoy. They don't realize it's a very hard profession. It's a very demanding profession, and if you perform or come to that expectation, demanding means if you have that urge of knowing your own society and changing that society in the right direction, then a lot more need to be done. I would say ultimately it's up to the professional, the young students who are taking these courses, to have a concern about Indian society very more deeply. That's why along with the media studies, I always suggest the journalism mass communication students should read more about Indian history, Indian economy, Indian sociology, so that they understand our society and accordingly they can serve better society. Basic purpose of journalism mass communication is to serve the society and give a direction, not make money, which of course is important.
So on the one hand, the channels of mass communication, because of commercialization, they are getting inclined towards infotainment. But then there are various forms of communication in a society like ours. Now in relation to functions of media, where do you place the other forms of communication?
Like
there are various forms of communication: interpersonal communication, group communication, mass communication.
Yeah, well, that's true. Mass media is one, but group communication and interpersonal communication are equally important. However, people might get information through mass media. Decision and attitude formation and decision taking place in groups or finally at family or individual level. So if there are communication theories we do use at mass media kind of spray, but decisions are taken in groups, smaller groups, and interpersonal communication or group communication in that context becomes very important. For instance, someone comes to know through mass media a particular product is advertised or particular information. He doesn't fully get convinced because he's got information through media. He cross-checks with the groups in which he has a trust, what we call reference group or opinion leaders, and then finally takes decisions after evaluating the whole information which he has got through mass media. We call it two steps or multi-step flow of information. For mass media it flows down, and a reverse also takes place. Mass media also picks up from the ground. So it's a very interesting dynamic relationship between interpersonal communication, group communication and mass communication. We cannot say in a mass media or modern society we can do away with groups or we can do away with interpersonal communication. Take the case of mobile telephone. It's a new mass communication in one way and still it's interpersonal. Two persons are talking and talking more. Earlier,
so what are the key characteristics of mass communication, interpersonal communication, group communication?
Well, let me start with the mass media. Mass media is for the mass society or mass audience. Basically it's known for the north. It's not at one place. Means mass audience is not at one place. Newspapers who are reading, say, a particular newspaper will not be at one place, may not be in one city, may not be in one country. They're spread over. That's the first criteria. They're not at one place. They're not homogeneous. They're not one age group or one sex or one professions. They're heterogeneous. Third thing, there are no leadership per se. So that's the criteria of a mass audience or mass communication. So the contents of mass communication or mass media also has to serve, because a large number of people spread over large area, they are very heterogeneous, they have nothing in common. Basically all is no, not this, not this, not this. So contents has to a variety of content. Something suits me, something suits the other person. It's kind of cafeteria approach, that's something for everybody. So he gets satisfied and goes to that cafeteria. Now group communication is more organized.
So one point I think in the mass communication, you mentioned that this is mass audience and this heterogeneous and from different point of view it's very highly heterogeneous, very huge audience also. But again the process of mediation that is being conducted, the information that is being processed,
by
that
individual.
is controlled by a very small, perhaps a small professional, highly professional and trained group.
Well, that's what you call gatekeeper's role. Media people or media professionals function as gatekeeper. I mean, a lot of information they know. They have to take a choice, make a choice. What should be put in a particular news bulletin or particular newspaper? Then they have to make another choice, what we call, whether it's front page or the third page or 11th page. They have to make another, whether it's a lead story. So that gatekeeping function is there, and they do it on the basis of the professional experience. They think this will be of interest, and that's why they are taking those decisions. Nobody is 100% sure what decision they have taken is the right decision, but that's their function. You cannot put them in a haphazard way, everything, then nobody will be able to read anything or watch anything or listen anything. So that function has a role, and professional experience teach them what people like. And it has been misused also. People like, in the name of saying, people like, they keep on dishing out something which is not. People.
Can we say that in mass communication it's a highly trained professional group which is communicating with very huge and heterogeneous audiences?
Very true. I mean, it's a small group which has a control over media. That's why they exercise enormous power. We call it by different names, enormous power with to let people know or do not know, and what time to know, and how, with what emphasis people should know. Means they are gatekeeper, they are exercising some kind of control, and in that sense they are exercising power, and in that sense they are very influential media people. But ultimately, let me say, Professor Dhulia, it's the individual who processes the information. When he reads a newspaper, thousands and lakhs of other people also might be reading, but he reads as an individual. When he reads a novel, he reads again as an individual. He kind of mental works goes on, and his interpretation becomes very vital. Same informations, 10 different people reading exactly the lead story might have a 10 different interpretation of the same
different
story.
Perceptions they will
Different
develop from that
perceptions they will
information.
develop. And that is a very, very complex process, how people perceive a particular thing. The same thing, different people perceive differently. Exactly the same, but people will perceive differently.
So mass communication has a major advantage that it can communicate with large number of people at the same time. And then interpersonal communication, what are the key characteristics of interpersonal communication?
More intimate, more immediate, that's one thing. More closer, more reliable, and more trusted. Because you have an interaction, interpersonal communication with a smaller group whom you know for a longer period of time, and you have a faith in what they say, trust. So basically, interpersonal communication is among those who have a trust with each other. So anything which communicated with that kind of trust background is likely to be more accepted, perceived the same way in the part of the group. That's why advertisers, if you take a simile of that, advertise through mass media, then send the extension people, the salespersons, in the form of a group communication. They organize it, and then finally goes door-to-door selling and put across the point. And finally, even that doesn't work, they put across people who they have trust, influential, and that's why they are able to push a particular product. Same is true about an idea. Idea can be through mass media, group communication, interpersonal communication. It's very vital. Final decisions, final attitudes are formed in groups and interpersonal level.
There is a call from Jabalpur. We can take the call.
Yeah, please.
Yes,
you ask
please.
your question.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Sir,
Yes.
I'm from Jabalpur.
Yes, please.
Sir, I would like to know, there is a blanket ban on AXN Action TV. And government has put the ban on the name of obscenity and the name of vulgarity. I would like to know that if this is the reason to ban a channel, why we don't have a ban on some channels which is still on the name of information spreading the vulgarity and obscenity.
Well, I think that question is very, very wide open question, and but still I would request Dr. Yadav to comment on that and to assess that out. Because again, I would say that It's a question that how we define the morality, what we define that what is vulgar and what is not vulgar. These are the very highly debatable questions, and every day we are confronting that kind of issues, that how to define them. So Dr. Yadav, would like to comment on that?
Well, this is a very vital area. Means we say freedom of expression at one hand, and there freedom of expression with certain restraints or restrictions, and those are come under obscenity and vulgarity under that. But as Professor Dhulia says, precise measurable obscenity or vulgarity is very difficult. Every society has its own norms, and let me say, even a given society is not a static society. We keep changing. It's a dynamic reality. What was obscene yesterday may not be obscene today. Now, I'm not sure about which example AXN you are talking about, why it has been banned in the name of vulgarity, but some people must have seen it carefully and then taken a decision. It's a national decision. It's not at one level. And I don't think if it's a wrong decision, it will boomerang on in Indian or Indian audience will demand for it and come back. You might have noticed many times a particular book is banned and that sells more. So please don't be frightened on these issues. If something is worth watching and technology is available, I often say people, if something is worth watching and technology is available, people do find a way to have an access to that. So this ban, I am not sure how temporary, how permanent it is, but doesn't apply across all channels. There are continuous monitoring of channels by certain people, certain authorities, and decisions are taken after due considerations, because our Constitution do provide freedom of expression, our Constitution do provide certain restraints and constraints on that freedom. So we have to exercise that freedom with restraints and responsibility. In the name of freedom, you cannot and should not step on other person's toes. That's what the argument is. And from our point of view, if AXN has stepped on our toes of cultural values, people might have objected and put some kind of restraint or ban on that. That's all I can say.
Well, nowhere in the world freedom is absolute, and freedom is exercised within certain parameters which might be defined by the legal system, by the Constitution, by social and cultural values, and that we have to take into consideration. And I think we are still in a process of evolving some norms that how to regulate the various television channels that are coming in every day. So I think that's a major issue, that how to monitor them, and whether how to evolve a mechanism, as Dr. Yadav has mentioned, that how to evolve a mechanism that we can monitor all the channels and set some norms, that how to define what is vulgar and what is not vulgar. Coming back to the point that we are discussing mass communication, interpersonal communication, group communication, and there's one factor, that is the feedback, I think, which is very, very important in all three forms of communication. So would you like to elaborate on that count?
Well, feedback in interpersonal communication comes immediately. You are face to face with a person, either through words or sentences or phrases, it comes back. But more importantly, body language tells the other person whether he has understood it or not, liked it or not, or what has happened. When you go to a group, the feedback becomes a little more complex, difficult, but it does come through discussions, we call discussion group. Mass media also, there is a mechanism of evolving or getting some feedback. Letter to the editors is a common means you do write to the channels, do write to the newspapers what you like, what you do not like. Although very few number of letters are published, but each organizations do get lots of letters, and there is a system of scanning through it and then taking a view of it. So in mass media, because it's spread over a large area, large number of people are involved, and you cannot accommodate every letter. It takes time to get that kind of feedback, what's the reactions. But there is a mechanism, slow, but it's there, and it's very helpful to get feedback, because ultimately it's the audience, I said it a moment earlier, is the audience which is the king. They decide. If they don't like something, they do tell, just the way the person from Jabalpur said ban on AXN is he doesn't like or he didn't approve. So that kind of feedback comes, he must have written somewhere else also. So system is there, But feedback in mass media is weak. Feedback in groups is reasonable, while in interpersonal communication is very, very strong, immediate and very effective.
Phone call?
Hello.
Yes, please.
So what is the role of English press in India? I would like to know that the Hindi channels enjoy some popularity among the people, but as far as the matter of English press is concerned, they are lacking. So I would like to know what is the role of English press in India?
We have English media, then we have very powerful Hindi media that has emerged, and then we have now media in Indian languages is expanding very, very fast. I think major expansion has occurred in the Indian language media, whether it's television channels or newspapers. Traditionally, Dr. Yadav, how do you place? The question is that what role English media is playing in our country?
Well, let me put it this way, though the circulation of English press is comparatively very low and growth is slow, or rather growth is not there as compared to the language press, Hindi in particular, but all other Indian language press is booming, is expanding, going deeper and deeper from city to towns, towns to villages, while English press or English media is shrinking more to the metro cities. But let me say, those who are exposed to the English press, small minority, maybe 2% of the total population of India, but very powerful in terms of decision making. So in that sense, English press or English media is important, because majority of decision makers, whether it's in business, industry, politics, science, technology, they depend more on the English media. They might say it's very lopsided development, but that's what it is. That's why balance is taking place. Decision makers depend more on whether Economic Times or whichever papers, on that kind of press. And now Economic Times circulation or Times of India or Hindu is limited, confined more to the metro cities, but the large circulated papers are language press. So their political decisions, attitude formations, opinion formations take place. Many of the leaders don't bother about English press in that sense, and they depend more on the language press.
Yes, broadly we can say that English media is still very powerful, as Dr. Yadav mentioned, because even if the growth in English media is not that much, is much lower as compared to Indian language media, but because English media has reached in that powerful minority, it might be 3% or 4%, which is responsible for decision making, which is responsible for influencing government policies and programs. Policy making in general. So in terms of impact, we can say English media is still very influential, but in terms of influencing public opinion, I think Hindi media and
language press
is very, very powerful. So you might have observed that during time of elections, most of the political parties, they give a great amount of focus on Indian language media, because they are ultimately, they influence the public opinion. One point that I would like to mention is that in our country, the media consumers or readers, listeners and viewers are increasing very fast. So English media, Indian language media, Hindi media, television channels, internet connections, cable homes, everything is increasing. We haven't as of now reached the state that one will choose one against the other. So some media habits are undergoing a change, but still every sphere of media is expanding and increasing.
Well, literacy is rising very fast.
Purchasing power is increasing.
Purchasing power is, television is reaching in rural areas. So not only the language, but the dialects are becoming important. Many of programs in the local dialects becomes very powerful. So it's a very interesting, complex situation, and India is known for the diversity, and we have diversity of languages, culture. English also is, in that sense, is not a foreign language for Indians. They are doing very well. It has helped us also in globalization. That has come to our advantage. And the world, whether we like it or not, English has become a global language. And in liberalization and globalized economy, it's an advantage. but other languages are also catching up.
Going back to the point that I was discussing with Dr. Yadav, it was about feedback in mass media, in newspapers. Dr. Yadav, I have worked in a daily newspaper, and at a certain point of time, I was looking after that column, letters to editor, and I have observed that the people who frequently write letters to editor, there's a very tiny part of total readership who are very, very hyperactive. And my feeling is that that's not truly the true feedback in a sense, because that doesn't reflect the total profile of feedback of the audience of a newspaper.
No, it's very true. There are certain what we call professionals related to the editor writers. Any issue they would like to see their name and write it.
Yes.
That's one.
And it's still, they're very active people.
Very active, but you might have read recently in a newspaper, a person in Bombay writing through letter to the editor had changed the Bombay Municipal Corporation. Many of these small things. It's not that it's not effective. It does happen. Pavement in Bombay. It's a very good case study to look at it. Only through writing letters to the editor, because active person. But you are right, thousands and thousands are the viewers and readers of particular mass media, but all are not taking part. That's why I say it's a weak. It's a weak in terms of quantum. But still, there's some mechanism is there. If someone wants to write, there is a provision in all the channels, all the media to write. And if I give an example, Reader to Digest becomes popular just because they responded every letter which came to their office. I hope they're still doing it, because at least whether they get a place in the print form or not, but responded means they are listening to or attending to the letter to the editor. I hope some such policy adopts some newspaper or responding, because then there will be more. Why people are not writing that frequently? Because very few get published, and they get discouraged after a couple of times making an attempt. But they have view. They do express after reading a newspaper or watching it. So they discuss in groups. They even go out and protest, influence the parliament. It's a kind of feedback. A newspaper giving a report, Katrochi or this kind of thing is having enormous ripple effect across. That's also feedback. But not on the contents, but on the issue which is brought about is taken up, and that's why opinions are formed.
So, well, we are coming close to the session, and as Dr. Yadav mentioned, in case of interpersonal communication and group communication, the feedback is instant, and in mass media, the channels of mass communication, feedback is indirect, and that is either given by the audience through letters to editor or in other forms, and then there is another that in research that are conducted to collect the feedback.
Yeah, readership surveys are a kind of feedback. Decline of circulation is a kind of feedback.
Yes.
It's a one way of looking at it. If the circulation goes down and down, management do get a feedback.
So we'll continue our debate in our next session on communication process, forms and systems and models. And thank you, Dr. Yadav, for joining us for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed. Thanks very much.